All right, this just in as the San Francisco 49ers have made a roster move, adding a wide receiver to their depth chart in Willie Snead, a pretty notable name. This is interesting because on this same Friday, San Francisco also worked out a different wide receiver, Dede Westbrook. We'll talk about him and whether or not he could sign. Then on the back half of the show, a training camp news and rumors roundup. But first, let's begin with talking about Willie Snead, who to the common NFL fan is a pretty notable name by the way that he was able to start his NFL career with Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints. Aaron Wilson, who's been doing a good job of covering the NFL throughout this offseason, did break the news here on Friday afternoon that Willie Snead is coming to San Francisco. And we'll see if he has an opportunity to crack this roster. The 49ers did make some roster moves at that wide receiver spot this morning. They released Tyjair Mack because he just wasn't really playing and performing well in training camp thus far. So some openings on this 49ers roster at that wide receiver spot, and you could certainly do worse than bringing in Willie Snead. Now, his first 2 years of his NFL career with the New Orleans Saints, he was really good, and the production was really impressive on a pass-happy New Orleans offense with a couple of other really good wide receivers. You look at what he did back in 2015, 101 targets, 69 catches, 14 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns. Had a career at Ball State, had to carve his role onto an NFL roster, and was able to do that in the Big Easy. Following season, once again, the production was there. 104 targets this season, 72 receptions, 12.5 yards per catch, and 4 touchdowns. The only problem with Willie Snead, he struggled to find a firm spot on a roster since then. A couple years ago with the Baltimore Ravens was somewhat solid. Last year with the Panthers as well as the Las Vegas Raiders, 9 games, 8 targets, 4 catches, and 38 yards. So there really wasn't a lot of production there for Willie Snead. And for this 49ers team right now, they're in a position where they pretty much have their wide receiver room set with Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Juwan Jennings, Ray McLeod, Danny Gray, and really this is where Snead enters the fold, competing for possibly that last wide receiver 5 or 6 spot alongside a guy like Malik Turner who had that highlight reel one-handed catch on the dime from Trey Lance earlier this week. We're only getting started on the show. I hope that you stay tuned for every single second of it because this show an absolute heater. But I want to hear from you in the comment section as we keep it moving. Will Willie Snead make the roster? This will be the pinned comment on today's show. So if you get hit with that YouTube ad break, use it to your advantage. Scroll on down and get your votes in. By the time you do that, we'll be back breaking it down. M for make, W for he won't make the roster. Predict it for me in the comment section. Now, Snead could battle for that 5th or 6th wide receiver spot. What is also pretty notable here with this acquisition, we know that Kyle Shanahan, when evaluating and looking at wide receivers, likes wideouts who can block downfield because the run game is really the strength of this offense. That is something that Willie Snead does very well, and that's why Brandon Ayuk was in the doghouse to start last year because he wasn't doing the little necessary things that Kyle Shanahan wants to see from his wide receivers and freeing up his running backs and other wideouts by blocking downfield. That is something that Snead brings to the table. There's also this. He came into the NFL all the way back in 2014 as a UDFA out of Ball State with the Cleveland Browns when Kyle Shanahan was the offensive coordinator. So a little bit of familiarity between Shanahan and Willie Snead. Coming up next on the show, 49ers worked out another pretty big name wide receiver who's pretty popular and has been over the last couple of years. But first, this is why you subscribe to the channel. Breaking news happens. I got my boy producer Chugs. We cooked up this video real quick because we wanted to get it out as fast as possible for the faithful. And at the end of the day, that's a big reason why we are the biggest 49ers News and Rumors channel on YouTube, north of 60,000 subscribers with training camp here. Preseason officially a week away as San Francisco hosts the Green Bay Packers, FGB. We're going to be ramping up our coverage just like we've been doing over the last couple of weeks. Hit that red sub button. And if you are subscribed to the channel and you love what we do and you're a big supporter of the San Francisco 49ers, red and gold till you're dead and cold, show us you're a real one by getting one of these Real One t-shirts. The movement was happening. The movement was real, so much so that I got in touch with the bosses and I said, you know what? We need to start making and trotting out these Real One t-shirts. You can get them right now by heading to chatsports.com/Real149. Available in red and black. I'll put that link in the comment section and the description of this video. To the other notable wide receiver that the 49ers worked out on Friday, this coming from Field Yates, they worked out Dede Westbrook, who, when he was at Oklahoma with Baker Mayfield, they were a great and dominant 1-2 punch at that quarterback and wide receiver spot. Producer Sam Brown, Boomer Sooner, went to Oklahoma and knows all about Dede Westbrook, and a lot of other people do as well. Had a really good start to his career, but like Willie Snead, has kind of fallen off a little bit. 2021, 10 receptions, 68 yards. The numbers really weren't there. 2020 only played one game, shortened because of injuries, but you see the potential. You see the ability. All you have to do is turn the clocks back to 2019 to see what he's capable of doing. Pretty good sample size here. 66 grabs, 660 yards, 3 touchdowns. And the year before that, same amount of receptions, even more yards with 717. And he's a chain mover, 5 touchdowns. Now, what does this mean for San Francisco now that they signed Willie Snead? Did they evaluate both players and thought, okay, we're going to sign Willie Snead, but we're not going to sign Dede Westbrook? Or because they released Mac earlier today, Marcus Johnson is injured and in concussion protocol, they need a couple of camp bodies at wide receiver. So maybe they signed Willie Snead, Dede Westbrook could be coming up around the corner, or maybe they had to pick between one of the two wideouts. Do you think the Niners should sign Dede? It's one of the best names, I believe, in the NFL. Dede. Great name right there. Give me an S for sign or a P for pass. Love the football knowledge from the faithful. Show me what you know in the comment section right now. Gonna round off with some news and notes from another day of 49ers training camp, and a lot to take away from today's practice. We start with this. Trey Lance had arguably his best day of practice against what is a vaunted, dominant, physical, and one of, if not the best defenses in the National Football League. A big reason why Lance was able to have success, the interior offensive line and the offensive line from left to right, right to left, however you want to slice it up, actually performed well. Specifically, Aaron Banks, the second-year player, second-round pick last year out of Notre Dame, and the fourth-round pick this year at right guard in Spencer Buford out of UTSA, who continues to have the inside track at that starting right guard role because he's been getting all of the reps there. Lance completing 9 of 13, 10 of 13 passes, something in that window. It's hard to keep track at these practices, but for those on hand, they said he had a really good day, completing the short, intermediate, medium throws, and then on some money downs, he was able to be money there as well. Something of note, too, for Trey Lance, has not thrown an interception since Monday. Pretty good sign for him as he continues to get acclimated as QB1 for San Francisco. Did also stay after practice to work with Deebo Samuel. Deebo had that hold in before he signed that contract extension, so he wasn't partaking in practices. So he's had limited reps alongside Trey. So they thought, okay, it's Friday, the weekend's coming up, our practices won't stop, and we're not going to stop this grind. We need to get some reps in. So Lance did get that work in with Deebo Samuel. You love to see it. To the running back spot, to the backfield mates for Trey Lance, Elijah Mitchell, Ty Davis-Price continue to look like the top 2 backs on this roster. Trey Sermon has performed well up to this point. So too is the UDFA out of Georgia Tech and Jordan Mason. But today, Elijah Mitchell sprung free for a long touchdown run against this first-team defense, and TDP able to shake a defender out of his shoes. And he really gives this Niners offense something that I really like. A guy who's capable of catching passes, even though last year a little bit sporadic doing so at LSU. But that physical downhill approach. Last year in the second half of games, he was reeling off carries that went 5-6 yards per carry after halftime because he got stronger as those games went along. Center does continue to be a problem for this football team, and that's something that we're going to continue to monitor here. Now, Kyle Shanahan did talk about that center spot and said Jake Brendel, Daniel Brunskill going to continue to rotate reps with the ones and battle it out. He also said, we're going to see what happens in the preseason because you find out about offensive linemen after they get their ass kicked to see how they can respond. I love that quote from Kyle Shanahan, but I don't love the situation at center for San Francisco because Daniel Brunskill at center, Jake Brendel, very, very unproven at that spot, and that is the anchor of this offensive line, snapping the ball to Trey Lance. Before we hop on out of here, once again, Real One roll call. If you're a real one, type Real One and get your hands on those T-shirts. It's a movement, and it's also iconic fashion advice coming from us, giving you those fresh tees. Comment Real One. Appreciate all of you for watching today's show. You see the link down below. That's how you get those tees. It's also on the community tab on our YouTube channel, chatsports.com/real149. I'll be back throughout the weekend giving you the best 49ers news and updates throughout training camp.